Our next fallacy is called special pleading. This happens when people apply one set of rules to themselves, or maybe to certain other people, but a different set of rules to everyone else. Let's look at a couple of examples. Example. It's okay with me if that cashier shortchanges people, as long as she doesn't do it to me. Where does the special pleading come in? The speaker is saying that it's okay for cashiers to shortchange people or not give them back enough change, but it's not okay for a cashier to do it to the speaker. Two different sets of rules. Another example. Harry. Everyone should use good manners. Mary. Then why did you just cut in front of me in line? Harry. You were being too slow. Again, we have Harry applying two different sets of rules. He speaks of one set of rules that applies to everyone, using good manners, but he applies a different set of rules to himself. It's okay to cut in front of someone who is being slow. It's not too hard to see that doing too much of this will get a person into trouble sooner or later. People tend not to trust other people who are wildly inconsistent in their reasoning. When is this kind of thinking not a fallacy? Keep in mind that different sets of rules can apply to different people in some circumstances. For instance, a person who is allergic to strawberries should probably stay away from strawberries. But it's still okay for people who aren't allergic to strawberries to eat them. In this case, having different sets of rules for different people is okay, and generally works fine. It's when someone uses special pleading with no good reason for the difference that it becomes a fallacy. Our last fallacy for this module is closely related to special pleading and ad hominem. It's called tu quoque, and it's Latin for you also. It might make more sense if we translated it as you do it too. In this case, we'll stick with the Latin terminology. One example of a real-life tu quoque argument comes from the post-World War II era. A Nazi leader went on trial in France for some war crimes that he had allegedly committed. His defense made the argument that the things that this Nazi had done were no worse than some of the things the French had done in other places. So what makes this a fallacy of distraction? It's because the defense distracted the prosecution from focusing on the actual issue, which was whether the Nazi leader actually committed these crimes, and instead they accused their country of having done the same thing at other times. Here's the basic form of a tu quoque argument. Premise: Person A makes claim X. Premise: Person B says that Person A has violated claim X at some point. Conclusion: Therefore, claim X is false or irrelevant. If you think about it, one thing a tu quoque looks like is something that can happen to a person who commits the special pleading fallacy. But even people who aren't trying to use special pleading can have a tu quoque used against them. Here's an example. Dad says, "Stealing is wrong. You should always be honest and never take something that doesn't belong to you." The son says, "But I remember that story you told me about when you were 7 and stole a candy bar from the store. How can stealing be wrong if you did it when you were 7? Stealing must not be wrong." Tu quoque is used fallaciously here. Presumably the parent has reformed since he was 7 years old, and he has learned over the years that stealing is wrong. The son apparently doesn't care whether stealing is wrong so much as he cares that he shouldn't have to follow any rules that his dad didn't follow. His conclusion is wrong because of a premise that he used. Namely, if his dad stole a candy bar when he was 7, then he must not be telling the truth now. This premise is a distraction from the actual argument. Can the same technique as a tu quoque be used non-fallaciously? Sure it can. Look at the following example. Dad: stealing is wrong. You should always be honest and never take something that doesn't belong to you. Son: but Dad, I know you stole a candy bar from the store when you were 7 years old. Isn't that stealing? Are you sure it's wrong? This time the son is not committing a tu quoque fallacy. He is asking an honest question about his father's past behavior. Presumably, father and son will be able to discuss this reasonably. Maybe the dad will say that he didn't understand anything about stealing when he was 7, but he understands now. Presumably also, the son is open to an honest answer from the father. If this all leads to an understanding between father and son, then there is no fallacy and all is right with the world. Let's review what we have learned in this module. An ad hominem fallacy is an attack on the person making the argument instead of the argument itself. Avoiding the question occurs when someone responds with something other than a direct response to the question asked. Faulty statistics are ones that cannot be trusted at face value. They may be referring to something other than what you think they are. A red herring is a false lead in a quest for information. A straw man argument occurs when someone sets up a weak or ridiculous version of their opponent's argument and then takes it down. Special pleading happens when people apply one set of rules to themselves and a different set of rules to everyone else. A tu quoque fallacy occurs when someone assumes that they don't have to listen to the opinion of someone else because the someone else had violated that opinion at some point. Ready for the next quiz? Here it comes. See you in the next module.